The One with the Ball is the 21st episode of the 5th season of Friends. This is directed by Gary Halvorson, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And there are three main parts of the narrative. We'll talk about these in turn. I will leave the one referring to the title to the end, just because everything wraps up quite nicely there. Part of the story focuses on Phoebe and Gary. And in Central Perk, Gary tells Monica he's going to ask Phoebe to move in with him. And Monica's so excited about this that even though she promised not to, as soon as Gary leaves, she tells Phoebe. And Phoebe thinks that it's maybe a bit too fast. So she asks Chandler to talk to Gary. And he does this, and we have a nice scene with Chandler and Gary. And Chandler realises that the things Gary is saying make sense, and he kind of encourages him to do this. We have a quote from Phoebe that's actually so true, kind of heartbreaking. Funny, but true. And she says to Chandler, freaking out about commitment is the one thing you can do, the one thing, and you can't even do that right. It's so harsh, but it's also kind of true. And Phoebe is trying to find a way to get out of this, and we have this brilliant scene where Phoebe is down at the station with Gary, and Gary ends up interrogating her. He interrogates her because she lied about not finding any apartments in the apartment listings. And it's a very well done scene. I do like it. And Phoebe kind of caves under the pressure and agrees to move in with Gary. And it's maybe not the best decision, but she's kind of getting on board with it. And then something happens that very quickly puts an end to this. They're in bed. Beautiful morning. The birds are tweeting outside of the window. Gary picks up his gun and shoots a bird. That's the end of that relationship. I guess it's good that they find out at this point rather than, you know, if Phoebe had waited to move in with him until she felt more ready, then she might not have found that out until she'd invested even more time in the relationship. So in a way, it was kind of a good thing that Phoebe felt pressured to move in with him because she found this out pretty quickly. And that relationship is over. We then have part of the story focusing on Rachel and her not a cat. This not a cat is actually a cat. It's a sphinx cat, and I am a huge cat person. I am obsessed with cats. I'm with Joey. It's not a cat. It's so creepy looking. I'm not a fan of them at all. And Ross's comment, why is it inside out, is it made me laugh. It's very true. It does look like it's inside out. And Rachel is aware of this, though, because she says she's called it Mrs. Whiskerson. And her response when they gave her strange looks was, what am I going to call her, Fluffy? which I rather enjoyed. And it's not going well for Rachel. I do like the fact that she's carrying the cat around on this cushion. It's beautifully presented. Every time she walks into a room, the cat is gorgeously presented, even if the cat itself is not gorgeous. And Rachel ends up getting these really deep scratches on her. They did a great job with the effects of making them look very real and very deep, but I do think she should probably go and get some kind of medical attention for them. They're very deep, and she doesn't want to keep this cat because it's not what she thought it would be like. If this episode does anything about raising awareness for sphinx cats, well, I don't think many people would rush out to get one after this. Maybe they would, I don't know, but I'm certainly not interested. And she ends up managing to sell the cat for a profit. She bought the cat for $1,000. She sold it for $1,500, I believe, to Gunther. And I loved Gunther coming up to the apartment to get the cat stuff because I really like it when we have Gunther in the apartment. It's always like he's just an extra friend. He's like the seventh friend. And when he's in the apartment, it's just a glimpse of what could have been if he was more prominently in the fold. I don't think he should have been. It's just nice to see, and nice that he bought Mrs. Whiskerson from Rachel. Not surprising either. Then we have the main narrative, and this focuses on the fact that Joey and Ross were throwing around a ball, throwing this back and forth, and Joey points out that they'd been throwing it without dropping it for about an hour. And Monica finds out about this, and she decides she wants in on the action because she's very competitive, and she phones in sick. She's playing desperate to beat their highest score, even though I'm pretty sure they've already beaten their highest score. And 4 hours later, Chandler decides to play. They don't want him to because he's a dropper, but he ends up playing. And I like the fact that the conversations we have when they're throwing the ball around are sometimes really quite random. They're things that wouldn't fit into natural conversation a lot of the time. not necessarily always to Joey's amusement. One time he suggested to Ross it could be a quiet game or a silent game. And I like that because it's kind of random at times, and I think it works really well. And then we have following morning, 6 a.m. They're still throwing this around, and honestly, I would have given up way sooner. Part of me wants to see how long I could do this for, but also I'm kind of a dropper. I'm not that great. I don't have the best hand-eye coordination. Don't invite me to play this game. But I would be keen to see how long I could actually go. It would depend on the other players, of course, but I would probably be the worst at it. And then 6 a.m., Phoebe comes home, obviously explains what has happened with Gary. And I will say I'm not sad that the relationship with Gary is done because, well, I don't dislike the character. I just never found him to be that interesting. I guess he was okay. I didn't mind the character, but definitely not a personal favourite. But anyway, Phoebe comes over and she's obviously not in the best of moods, so they throw the ball to her to try and cheer her up and involve her in the game. And she just says, I don't feel like playing, and puts the ball down. And I wanted to use this as the thumbnail for this, but I try to avoid spoilers, and it's not the biggest spoiler in the world, but I didn't want to indicate how the game ended just in case somebody hasn't seen this episode yet. And she puts the ball on the table, and we just have this gorgeous shot of the ball in the foreground and everybody looking at it. And it's fabulous. It's a beautiful shot. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And then Monica, still competitive, decides that they should all go for breakfast, and whoever gets there last is the loser, of course. And they decide, when she's run out of the apartment, to just have breakfast in the apartment. And then we're at Central Perk, and they're briefly talking about the ball game, recapping the events, and Chandler asks how he got this reputation as a dropper. And then we have this really fun montage of just loads of clips of Chandler dropping things or not even being aware that something was being thrown at him. It's very brief. It's very fun. I rather enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty entertaining. It's a great episode. There's nothing about it that I don't like. I mean, the image of Gary shooting a bird, yeah, I don't love that. But I think every aspect of this worked really well. Everything flowed really well. Really funny. The cat is, as much as I don't like sphinx cats, I've never actually met a sphinx cat in real life. I'd be very keen but hesitant to stroke one to see what it feels like. I'd imagine it would feel like stroking a peach. I don't know if anybody's ever touched a sphinx cat. I'd love to know what it feels like. I could probably Google it. But apart from the appearance of the cat not being the most pleasing, I actually do love that part of the episode. Personal highlights? I don't know. I feel like the whole thing is just pretty great. No complaints from me here. The one with the ball is a really solid, really good fun episode of Friends.